I'm Denise.
She's a non-fiction editor. And I'm Louise.
She's a fiction editor. And together,
we're the Editing Podcast.
Hello, it's Denise here. Episode 78 of the Editing Podcast was part one of our chat with Carol Saller, where we talked all about blogging goals, how to get ideas for blogging, and promotion strategies. In this episode, we carry on our conversation about blogging with Carol, and that includes repurposing blog content and making use of analytics without getting lost down the rabbit hole. Take it away, Louise.
So let's talk about one of Denise's and my favourite topics. We love talking about repurposing. It's the best time-saving hack we can think of. Now, some people have asked me if that's cheating, and I always think that it's about respecting the fact that people want to consume content in different ways. So, Carol, what's your take on repurposing? Have you approached it? Have you done that, and was it successful?
Well, first of all, I totally agree. It's not cheating. It's not like there are rules. I mean, actually, that reminds me of a funny story. Can I tell a funny story?
Of course you can.
Absolutely, yeah.
When my son was little, one of my sons, I taught him that card game. We call it War. Maybe you know it. It's just pure chance. The highest card wins. There's no way to strategize. And after a while, my son threw down his cards in disgust and said, "There's no way to cheat at this game." So that's how I feel about repurposing. There's no way to cheat. You can repurpose anything you want because, just like you said, nobody's on social media or whatever all the time. You need to put it out there in different ways. It's very unlikely that anyone's going to see it more than once anyway. On the other hand, I am not good at this. I've done a terrible job repurposing. I tried to make a podcast and from recycled material, and my heart just wasn't in it. I actually took it down. I think it's there, but it's not. I don't put it in my menu anymore. I took it away a long time ago. I also tried to self-publish a collection of early blog posts, and I do make about 79 cents a month from that. Literally. I'm not kidding.
Well, one of those 79 cents would have been from me, because I do in fact have a copy of Moonlight Over.
Oh, that's so nice.
One of the early things I bought, actually. When
Gosh. Yeah. Well, it's not easy to sell something that's available free online, but then
although, can I just butt in there?
Sure.
Because Rich Aiden pulled all his blog posts together and put them in a book called The Business of Editing, and I bought that because that Ruth Taylor Carter owns that, the American editor now. But when Rich was working on it, it was so dense. There was so much stuff that I thought, I don't want to try and navigate in that space. There's too much. And this is the thing about popular blogs. It becomes difficult to find things unless you've got stuff feeding into a learning center where there's tagging set up. And so actually that can be really effective for some people who just want to get the stuff. They just want to access it. It's always worth a try, I think.
Yeah, I agree. I think one of the problems with my selling that book now is that a lot of the posts have to do with editing technology. I mean, tangentially.
Yeah.
And that's just, it's not that fresh. I don't really try to sell it anymore. And I've thought about taking it down altogether. But I take your point that if I were to try another volume with more recent posts, I think it would. Of course, now I wouldn't be allowed to, because I think the University of Chicago Press owns my
owns your content.
Right. Yeah.
But after hearing one of your podcasts on repurposing, I made a little list of ideas to carry through on. And I love these ideas, although I haven't done any of them. But I remember what they were. One was to make a long Twitter thread out of an old post. And these threads, they start off by saying, this is going to be a long thread. So people are, and then they keep replying, so it's more, it's many tweets all linked, and it doesn't inconvenience anyone, because anyone who isn't up for a long tweet can just pass over that one. But they get a lot of traction.
They do. I've found that whenever I do one, Carol, it gets huge engagement on Twitter, way above my other
Yeah.
tweets
Yeah.
and things like that. People like to think that they're getting a chunky bit of content and, giving, 10 or 15 points in one thread that's all held together in one thread rather than them all getting lost in separate tweets.
Yeah.
People really like that.
Yeah, again, you're making it easy for people, aren't you?
Little
to
bites.
Yeah.
snippets.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's right.
Mm.
And you also mentioned making a slideshow or even a screencast video out of a post, which I actually know how to do, but have not done. I don't even tweet links to old posts very often, even though I want to, but I haven't actually found those to get much love. So that one, no.
I suppose it depends what I mentioned that to Louise once about, because we both use schedulers to recycle our older, our evergreen content that's still relevant. And although they may not necessarily be getting a huge amount of engagement, people are still seeing them. It's still there.
Sometimes it's a nudge.
Yeah, it can just be a nudge.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I also think that sometimes when I look at the analytics and I see some of the stats telling me where people have come from, that doesn't always reflect on that particular day that level of engagement I've got in terms of people liking or commenting. So I think it's often more worth doing than people realize. Put it that like I try not to get too bogged down in the have people engage with this, given that I have posted this maybe X number of times before in the past 3 years. If it's still relevant, I've started looking a bit further down the road and thinking like, what happens after that? Probably lower down in the funnel, Denise. We're going to talk about funnels later.
Funnels.
Well, I'm going to make a note of that, and I'm going to try it more. That's a resolution.
So you can. I mean, if you want to, I pay for a scheduler because I have quite a lot going out, but something like Buffer is free.
Free. Yeah.
Well, I used when I was tweeting for Turabian at the University of Chicago. We used Hootsuite or something like that for the scheduler. Yeah, and it was a wonderful time saver. In fact, when I retired, I loaded a year's worth of those and left them as a gift for Russell Harper.
Bye.
Well, he was thrilled. It saved him a lot of work.
Yeah. So have you had any successes then that you tried?
Yes, I have. And it was, unfortunately, I can't claim credit for it, except that I wrote the content originally. But, for many years, I was the editor of the Chicago Manual's online Q&A. And my colleague, the late David Morrow, it took him a while to talk me into collecting a few hundred of our favorite questions and answers into a book. I just didn't think it would work, but it did work. And it's called But Can I Start a Sentence with But? And it came out in 2016, and it's done pretty well.
I've got that one as well. I'm one of your buyers on that.
Yeah, it's a fun read.
It's interesting that you didn't think that would be successful, but I think it's going back to that thing about having all that information gathered in one place for people, rather than people having to scroll back through previous episodes, previous comments on your Q&A over the years. To have all in one place is
it's indexed, which is and I did the index myself. So
did you?
Yeah.
Plus, it's full of. Sorry.
That's another hour.
About indexing, yes.
The thing about that book as well is that it's full of stuff that's not going to go out of date. It's kind of pithy, solid advice. It's that kind of stuff that you want to look at again and again and again. And you don't want. I like the size of it as well.
Oh, and it's such a it has a beautiful cover design.
It really does.
I like that cover design.
Yeah.
I think you're right. You might be surprised at how often we do have to take a question out of circulation because it's out of date. But on the whole, you're absolutely right. They do stay evergreen for the most part.
And I think as soon as you put a book together, people have to realize that I speak from experience here, because I was just looking at one of my books the other day and seeing 10,000 mentions of the Society for Editors and Proofreaders, which of course is they went and selfishly rebranded. And
honestly,
but I think people are sort of fairly forgiving if there's
Yes.
when you buy a book
Sure.
like But Can I Start a Sentence with But, you're not expecting that type of content to have an indefinite shelf life.
No, and
people,
there's a date on it.
Yeah. And you read it for you read it for a little bit of fun as well. It's supposed to be enjoyed, I think, that book, as well as helping you.
That was the plan, so I hope so.
Yeah, definitely.
I think it worked. Yes. Yeah. So I'm going to get a bit technical for a moment. Well, sort of. I'm interested to know how much time you spend, if any, on using analytics to guide what you blog about and how you measure its success. Because I think this is work that we have to do, but it has to be balanced. And because any analytics can turn into a rabbit hole, and we can get fixated on numbers that ultimately don't really have a lot of impact or meaning for us. So is it something that you focus on? And if so, how much?
Well, these days I spend almost zero time on analytics. But when I first started out, I did check the stats obsessively, and I would encourage every blogger to look into it. You can't break anything, and right away you'll probably see information that you might find useful. For instance, the demographic breakdown of your readers, or which posts get the most views, and the average duration of the views. But the problem is, as Denise suggested, all this information can immediately overwhelm the non-expert, which I'm guessing most of us are.
Yeah.
I mean, if 1,000 people have clicked on your pronoun post, but they bail on average within 30 seconds, and that post has been up for a year, is that better or worse than when 100 people stuck around for a whole minute on a different post that's only been up for 2 weeks?
Yeah.
I mean, if you love that question, and if you're motivated to learn the answer and then adjust what you write or how you promote your writing as a result, then you should definitely get into analytics.
And on the other hand, if you've got that, if 500 people click on your pronoun post and they bail after 30 seconds, and then one more person comes along and hires you and pays you $5,000 for an editing project, it doesn't matter even if the others bailed. And that's the sort of tricky stuff that I think maybe Delise was alluding to, because you can end up focusing too much. Like, I agree. I think we should have an overview. I think we should have a sense of the health of our blog and what it's doing, and patterns. Patterns are always good, but obsessing too much over the numbers. I mean, some people I know in the marketing industry, they're just like bonkers about the numbers, and it's like, but are you getting any work, or is it achieving your goals? If your goal was to sell. So it can be tricky to the more detailed you get into, sometimes the more trickier it can be to decide what to do.
Yes, and I think the thing about analytics is that they're probably more useful if you're actually selling something on your website. And I mean collecting money through credit cards or PayPal or something, as opposed to just promoting something nebulous that your readers will buy at another site.
Yeah, definitely.
I think one of the things, I don't know how you feel about this, Louise, but one of the statistics that I do find useful is the bounce rate. Do you look at that at all, Carol?
I do. Oh, sorry.
No,
you mentioned my name before.
You as well, Louise. But is that something?
I have, and my bounce rate is very high.
Yeah.
But again, that's because it's high. It's in the normal range for a site that's not selling.
Yes.
Yeah. And blog bounce rates are often high because people come in and they read the blog post, they get the answer, and then they leave.
And they leave again. Yeah.
Yes.
And so to have a bounce rate of 80-90% on a blog page is not unusual. But if I have a blog page where the bounce rate is lower, then I tend to look at that and see, well, is there something about that page? What is it about that page that I think has kept somebody on my site? So for people that aren't sure, the bounce rate is when somebody comes into a page and then leaves straight from there, doesn't go anywhere else on your website. And if the idea of your blog is to bring people to your website and keep them there for as long as you can, because you want to show them what a great editor you are. You want them to read more of your stuff. And that might be as simple as, are they bouncing off that page because there are no links on that page to any of your other
buttons
blogs?
or anything, no navigation tools.
Yeah, there's no call to action on that page for them to do something else, and that something else could be reading another related blog, or going to a video that you've made about something. So those are the sort of statistics that I think are useful in kind of just refining a blog a little bit more to make it more helpful to somebody, so that they have got a reason to go to another resource that you've created on your site as part of that process.
Yes. And there are a million great tutorials for
absolutely
learning analytics. And we can, there's one that I like called Google Analytics Tutorial 2021. It's new, and I can, we can put that link.
Yeah.
Yep.
Again, it's like SEO, isn't it? It's another one of these things that you can go down rabbit holes and you can be thinking, oh, I'm not going to touch that. But a little bit of that information can make
go a long way.
Go a long way. Yeah. We don't all need to be experts, do we?
No.
So give us an example, Carol, of where you've kind of, like, you were talking about your pronouns post, and have you had examples where you've had a post with a lot of traffic and concluded one thing, but actually but then actually thought, sorry, I wasn't saying that. Have you had any posts with a lot of traffic?
No,
but
I know
where
you know the story, so you want me to tell it. And I don't need much encouragement, because yes, there was the infamous post that this was back in the early days of Shop Talk, when we just started the blog and we were averaging about 100 page views a day. And I was looking at the stats all the time. And one morning I saw that in the last few hours, we'd had almost 4,000 new visitors.
Wow.
So I just was, well, first I thought I'd broken something. I thought it was, there was something wrong with the analytics, because it was just a plain vanilla post for students on something like how to cite the same source multiple times. So I took it over to the actual marketing professionals in the department. Yeah. And right away, one of these young women figured out that the fantasy writer, Patrick Rothfuss, had posted a link on Facebook because I had used his name, or his book, The Name of the Wind, in a citation example. I think it's still our most visited post. Really? And it's not because anyone has the slightest interest in citation styles. They're just fans of Patrick Rothfuss.
Isn't that interesting?
That's the power of the keyword and the fan base. You never know, though. Again, that's one of those things where something happens that pushes something out there. And even if that means that somebody who wouldn't have seen it before, maybe that's your next big client, or who knows. But anyway, that must be such a treat, though, just to look at that and just think. Another name I'd throw into the pot that we can put in the show notes is someone where Denise and I are both big fans of when it comes to all things webby, is Andy Crestodina of Orbit Media Studios, and he has a book called the Content Chemistry.
Oh, great, yeah. And Denise, you mentioned something yesterday, the Content Marketing Academy. Is that something?
Yeah, that unfortunately it doesn't exist anymore.
Oh, well, let's clap so that you can just take that part out if you want.
Yeah, no, it's fine. It's absolutely fine. I think what that does is Content Marketing Academy for me gave me great insight into how to use content marketing in different ways for editorial work, while mixing with a lot of people who were not editors and learning from them about how they market their products and services. And I think there's a lot to be said for editors stepping outside of our editing circles and doing some work and some learning in non-editing areas, because I think that sort of cross fertilization of ideas from people who don't know what editing is, and they'll ask you questions that makes you think, oh gosh, I need to write about that. Or they'll have a very different angle or perception of something you've written or some service you have that can really make you think about how you're presenting things. And also just watching other people run their small and medium-sized businesses, you can take and learn from them and how they do it. And I found that, I've said it before about the Content Marketing Academy, it's not an exaggeration to say that it changed my life, because it gave me a complete rethink about my editing business, and I learned a huge amount from it in the 4 years that I was involved with it. So, look out, look up and learn from content marketers. You don't need to be taken in by, all the bells and whistles, and some of it is a lot of, that there's a lot of talk and a lot of hype sometimes, but buried within that, there is some really great information that we can use.
And the thing about as well is paying a little bit of attention to the kind of fundamental, the foundational teaching of the content marketing approach means that you don't do what I did, and that's waste. Not waste. That's not true. That's not fair to say that. I think that I could have achieved more of my goals a lot quicker if I had been more strategic about things. I kind of got to where Denise had this sort of, Denise was having an epiphany around about the same time that I was going, oh yeah, all that stuff I've been doing for like 6 years, that works, and I think I know why. And then Denise was like at the same time going, so I've been learning about this, I've been learning about that, and I was like, oh, people are teaching this. You know what I mean? I just, the time that I could have devoted to doing other things or being more efficient about it, if I had taken a more strategic approach to my marketing, my learning of marketing, I think I could have saved myself some time. And going back to something that you mentioned right at the top, Carol, is that when we start doing this, you mentioned learning, and Denise just mentioned learning again there about her doing the learning. But when you start creating this stuff, you learn too. You develop. It's like creating a mini course or something, or it's such a great professional development opportunity when you start creating a blog, when you start writing a blog. So even if, let's go to your pronouns one, Carol, even if you're not even sure about pronouns, but you decide you want to write on them because it might be interesting for authors, and you want to demonstrate your expertise in that area, and then you end up finding out things about pronouns you never knew, and suddenly you feel way more confident, and all because you went to write a blog. That's a fantastic thing.
That's right. And I think people go into something they don't know about with different amounts of energy for learning, and I think if you pay attention and to your own instincts and learn at your own rate, it's better than if you take on too much and let yourself be overwhelmed by any aspect of it that you just can't seem to get a grip on. And I often have felt that way, that I just don't have a head for certain areas of marketing, and it's either maybe because they don't interest me, or it could be just I'm not smart enough to figure them out, or that I don't have the right teacher. There are a million reasons why you can become overwhelmed by having to learn something, but again, if you follow your interests, then that's going to serve you well. You'll do well at the things you're good at.
It's always more, and I think you're more likely to sort of, if you're approaching learning about things that interest you, you're more likely to sort of plow away at when you feel yourself coming unstuck, or when it feels hard, or when it's difficult. Whereas if it's something you don't even want to touch with in the first place, then it's just a killer. So
I'm laughing because I'm thinking about, Louise, how long did it take me to build my WordPress website, but I was determined to learn
Carol,
how
let
to
me
do it myself.
Tell you what, Carol, let me tell you, talk about wearing an accountability partner hat. If she hadn't lived in Glasgow, I'd have been round there banging on the door going, come on. It was so frustrating for me.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
It took me ages, but again, I wanted that control over it. I wanted to understand it and be able to build it myself so that I could fix it myself and change it myself. And obviously you're doing that alongside, we mustn't forget, we all have editing businesses to run. We're doing this alongside our, our client work.
And personal lives,
Yeah.
Yes.
But yeah, it was a slog, but I'm so glad I did it because now I know what I'm doing. Kind of,
Yeah, so am I. I'm so relieved when you got that done. I was
that's another tip then, to take your time. Take your time and do it the way you want to.
Yes, yeah.
And also maybe have a pal to hold you accountable, to sort of give you a nudge every now and then and remind you of your goals. If you're because we all need a little bit of the amount of times that Denise and I bounce ideas, because I think we both, it's like with any friendship, there's some things one of you is sort of more driven by and another is strong that way in another area, and being able to feed off that so that you can kind of find some happy medium for both of you is really helpful, because we can't do it all, can we?
No,
it's really hard.
Yeah.
If you don't have those sort of killer instincts.
And on that note, we're going to take a pause and end part 2 of our conversation with Carol Saller. Join us in part 3, episode 79 of the Editing Podcast, for more chat on sales funnels, monetizing your blog, managing reader engagement, and more. See you then.